Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Wildfire Watch. With fires burning to our north and south, we are all aware of the threat wildfire poses to our community. Tonight, we are going to hear from three industry experts about the wildfire insurance crisis in California. As we know, many insurance providers are not renewing policies or pausing new business. We will learn what to do if you are dropped or not renewed, and we're going to discuss new home hardening and defensible space requirements that result from new risk modeling adopted by the insurance industry. I'm Rich Shortall, Executive Officer of FireSafe Marin. After we hear from our experts, we will answer questions from the audience. To join in the conversation, please post your questions in the Q&A function within Zoom. We will try to address as many questions live as we can, but any questions that we do not get to will be answered on our website. Please look for those along with the recording of tonight's show at firesafemarin.org and the FireSafe Marin YouTube channel. So let's begin our conversation by introducing our first two guests. To my right, we have Amy Bach, Executive Director of United Policyholders.
Hello. And
we have Eric Henerlau, Independent Insurance Broker with Annister and Oster.
Hello.
Thank you. Well, good to have you both here. Appreciate it. This is just not surprising, but our phones are kind of buzzing off the hook with insurance questions. I'm sure the same for both of you. So we're hearing stories about this problem with companies not renewing policies. How big is the problem in California? Amy, you want to take that?
Well, it's been getting bigger and bigger. It had been a big deal in the foothills communities. Then it started to spread to some of the more suburban. It's been an issue in Tahoe. But really, it's spreading like, I hate to say, wildfire.
Oh my gosh. Eric, are there any examples of communities that are particularly hard hit?
Anytime you have a community that's going to be around a lot of trees, anywhere where there's a lot of hills, which pretty much most of Marin County is, we're going to see a lot of non-renewals, cancellations. We're getting calls every day, on some days 3 to 5 calls a day from people calling us because they're being canceled, oftentimes by main carriers that we all know, like State Farm and AAA and Safeco. So we're getting those coming in. Anywhere where there's going to be any proximity to any kind of trees or hills, you're going to see the cancellations coming in.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, so why are the policies not being renewed, Amy?
So we have a really unfortunate confluence of a lot of different factors happening at once, Rich. We have climate change. We have fears around climate change that the insurance industry is worrying what's this going to mean to their bottom line. We have inflation linked to COVID supply chain interruption. And then one of the most significant factors that's driving the crisis is the technology that insurers are now using, including aerial images, artificial intelligence, models, and all kinds of data that is making risks that they had been taking a lot more blindly, a lot more vivid to them. So they can see your roof, they can see the trees around your house, and they're acting on that data to protect their profitability.
Gotcha. Eric, what do you think they need in order to start writing policies again?
Well, like as Amy said, they're going to need better data all the way around. They're going to need good information about the homes out there. What condition is the house in? They look at things like the roof. They look at defensible space. We'll talk about that. They're going to look at other hardening aspects of the home. But the other thing they're going to look at is, where is that home in relation to everything else that's a high risk? When we talk about the wildfire risk and we talk about the hills, I live in the hills myself in Marin County, so I have trees around me. It's an issue. How can we do the best we can for that home to make it as insurable as possible? What can the insurance companies look at and say, yes, they would consider that home for a risk because the homeowner has done proper things to take care of it. So it may be a while before we get to that point, but that's kind of the direction it's headed.
Gotcha. Well, my own experience, I was canceled recently, living here in Marin County. And so, Amy, what do you recommend people do if they get a notice that they're not going to be renewed?
So start shopping right away is a very important point because California law requires the insurer to give you 75 days notice before the end of your policy if they're not going to be offering you a new policy when it expires. So we're telling consumers use every day of that. You may need every day of the 75. So don't put your head in the sand and think maybe something's going to change, right? Start shopping right away. Definitely contact the insurer to see, is there anything I can do to reverse your decision? Is there work I could do at my house that would cause you to change your mind? But as soon as you get that notice, get on it. We have been telling people an independent agent is going to be your best resource because they typically can put you with a number of options. Our website, United Policyholders website, uphelp.org, is a treasure trove of information free for the consumer to what do you do when you're dropped. So you can put in the search box dropped and it'll give you those steps. But the basic message is don't procrastinate, start shopping for replacement coverage.
Put a little plug in for your website. I think it's great. That's where I went. We've actually borrowed a lot of your ideas and put it on the FireSafe Marin website too, but it is really helpful. And that's actually where I went when I ended up being dropped. So Eric, one of the things...
Can I add something into that?
Yes.
Amy's absolutely right. Don't wait at all. Get moving on it right away. In addition, but I want to add one more thing. Don't panic. Okay, so the first thing is, when you get the non-renewal notice, don't panic and think the end of the world has come. It hasn't come. And with rare exception, there will always be insurance available for you. And the rare exception be if your house is really falling apart and that can't be insurable at all. But there will always be some level of insurance available, so it's just finding the right fit for you and finding the right fit for your situation. So don't panic about that. And she's right, get on it right away because there are a lot of options out there and it's trying to figure out what the best options are at the moment.
So you are an independent broker, part of the recommendation. I ended up going to an independent broker. Can you explain a little bit more what that's all about and how to find one, how that all works?
Sure. So an independent broker represents a lot of different companies. So for instance, we represent names you might know like Travelers and Safeco and Mercury and Hartford and so on. But in addition, an independent broker can go beyond the companies they represent to go to what we call the surplus lines markets or the non-admitted markets and find coverage with those carriers where it doesn't fit in with the admitted carriers. And right now, very few admitted carriers are writing any policies, so most often we're going to the surplus lines, and we can get access to those markets through an independent broker. And then ultimately, we can always go to the California Fair Plan if it doesn't fit there. So not all captive agents have that possibility. I'm not sure if Allstate or State Farm has that at all, and I know State Farm does not have that. So you've got to go to an independent broker to get access to those surplus lines markets.
Yeah. So speaking of that, Amy, I ended up going down that path. So the sort of the big companies, we call them the admitted companies and all, none of them were writing a policy in my neighborhood. So I went to a surplus line, or sometimes called a non-admitted. What are the pros and cons of that, of a non-admitted versus admitted?
Well, the pro is that it's an alternative to the California Fair Plan, which offers very limited coverage for pretty much the same or more than you'd been paying for full coverage. So a non-admitted company is generally going to offer you a one policy, right? You won't have to buy two like you would with the Fair Plan. So there's some simplicity there. And you can possibly get a better price for the coverage through a non-admitted than you would get through the Fair Plan and a patch DIC policy. The cons of going with a surplus lines or non-admitted type of a company, there's a few of them. One, they do not participate in the California Guarantee Association, which means if they run out of money, if there's a big event, big wildfire, and they use up all their money paying those claims, the people who didn't get paid have nowhere to go. There's no safety net under them. Whereas for a normal admitted insurance company, if they run out of money, and that doesn't happen very often. There was one small insurance company that went insolvent, and that was after the Camp Fire, because they just had a whole lot of homes in that one area, and they just couldn't handle it. Those folks got to go to the Guarantee Association to get their claims paid. So it's a little bit riskier, but if you work with an agent that understands the financial strength of that non-admitted surplus lines company and is confident that they have a decent rating, then it can be okay. The other downside of going with one of these non-admitted or surplus lines companies is that their rates and their forms are not regulated by the Department of Insurance. So while they are supposed to comply with California law and they're supposed to insure for fire and everything related to fire, some of them have a high wildfire deductible, which you would not see with a traditional admitted company.
Great.
So can I add into that too?
Sure.
So adding on to that, so she's absolutely right. When you go to a non-admitted carrier, you have to look very carefully at the coverages you are getting on that. In an admitted carrier across all the main companies you would know, the coverage is going to be very, very similar, and they might have some bells and whistles that the agent would add on to that. But in a non-admitted carrier, there might be some coverages taken away, like she was talking about the wildfire deductible, which is one, which is a very high thing. Some of them have limitations and other things they'll cover. Non-admitted carriers have a lot of flexibility in those coverages and pricing, which means as a consumer, we have to be much more careful about what we're buying. So we read through carefully and go over it with the agent to make sure you understand what you're buying. You need to be really educated in that.
So along those lines, I know a lot of people who have current policies, and this was true of me several years ago. I went to a talk about insurance, and I go, well, I don't have that, or I didn't cover that. And I went out and phoned my insurance company and got all those things. It cost me just a little bit more, but I really felt I had what I needed. So Eric, what do you recommend a consumer should be looking for?
So the first thing, when we're writing policies, we're always making sure, well, first thing, we make sure that you need the policy. If you have an existing policy and you're just shopping for price, not a good time to do that right now, because if you have a policy, it's a good thing, keep your policy. If you need a policy because your policy is getting canceled or non-renewed, when you look for coverages, make sure that your coverages are reflective of what it takes now to rebuild your house. As Amy pointed out, there's one of the factors going into this is the inflation and the cost of rebuilding is just skyrocketed. Lately, we're writing everything at minimum $500 a square foot in Marin County, and I just heard a quote from a contractor in Nevada that he's doing everything at $600 a square foot. So that's a quick math calculation to see how many square feet you have and do you have enough coverage on your policy. So you've got to look at that to make sure you have the right coverages on there. Sure, there's some things you can adjust, yes, but you got to make sure you have your right coverages to start out with, and go over that with your agent, whoever that person is. The other thing to go with that is to offset the premium. Try to get as high a deductible as you can. Some people treat their homeowner insurance policy like a home warranty, like every little drip or crack they're going to call in a claim. You don't want to be doing that. You really want to save it for some big catastrophic event, because if all the small claims you put in, it's just going to put them on notice to say you're a high-risk client and maybe we don't want to insure you, you might be canceled. And we find that a lot with clients who put in very small claims. Next thing you know, they're non-renewed because they had a lot of claims. Save it for the big thing, which means put a high deductible in there, keep the premium down, and save it for that major thing that might happen.
That sounds like really good advice. How does one go about finding an independent broker?
Well, we, number one is word of mouth, we believe. Talk to people that you trust, neighbors, coworkers, colleagues. I tend to say that the insurance agents that you'll see, like, supporting Little League or out there in the community, tend to be on the more helpful side. That they're out there and they have that sense of community connection. And then from there, the Department of Insurance has a comprehensive list of all the licensed agents and brokers in the state. One thing that I think is true that a lot of people find surprising is it's great to work with somebody local, but it's not imperative. So like if you are having trouble finding a local agent these days, it's okay to find somebody who's in another area, as long as they're familiar with, as Eric was saying, what would a contractor in this region be charging per square foot to put your house back from the ground up, which is what you want to be thinking about when you're buying your insurance.
Good. So we're starting to get some questions in, and not surprising, the first one has to do with the FAIR plan. So maybe if you could do two things, talk just a little bit more about how FAIR plan works. And then also, the first question is, they're having a hard time getting a response from FAIR plan.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so maybe you can bundle all that together.
Sure. Do you want?
I can start. You can what have you. So the FAIR plan was built in 1968 as a safety valve for people in the inner city areas of LA that couldn't get insurance after the Watts riots, right? It wasn't intended to be the wildfire insurer of last resort for the entire state. But that is what it has become. And so it is having a lot of growing pains. And they did change over to a different computer platform in the fall, and we were hearing horror stories about people waiting a month to get and being on the phone for 8 hours. That is behind us now. The FAIR plan has largely caught up with their processing, but it is still very hard to get very clear answers from the FAIR plan directly, which means that it is very important that the agent or broker that you're working with really be familiar with the options that the Fair Plan offers, because it is a customizable policy. It is not an off-the-shelf one-fits-all. There are different options. And a lot of agents in the past would have done anything before they would have put one of their customers with the Fair Plan. So a lot of agents didn't really know that much about the Fair Plan. But by now, where we are in this situation, any good agent, any agent worth their salt is going to be up to speed.
We do at least 1 or 2 Fair Plan policies a day in our office. I do one a day at least. And so yes, it is. She's right. It's very customizable. So you have to make sure you have a conversation with the client to say, okay, we're going to insure your house for whatever it is. We know what the coverage for the dwelling is, but then how much personal property coverage do you want? How much of these other things do you want? Because you can really adjust those coverages down there. But she's right about the other part. We will not go to the Fair Plan unless we exhaust the other possibilities. By law, we have to do that. We have to exhaust the other possibilities before we go to the Fair Plan, which isn't hard these days because most of them, there are not many other possibilities. But it is customizable, and you have to put together the right package in the way that it's done, including you have to document for the Fair Plan. They want pictures of the house. They want to see all the way around. They want to see that this house is insurable. A few years ago, they were less concerned about that. They would just take houses. Now they're getting a little more picky, and they say, we want to make sure the house is insurable. We want to see good pictures of the house all the way around. So I encourage clients who are looking, they have to get the Fair Plan, make sure your house is presentable. Think about if you were trying to sell the house or rent it out. How would you want to clean it up to make it look nice? So you want to make sure it looks that way for the Fair Plan. If they see a house that is run down, they will actually reject it. We've had that happen a couple of times. They say, you know what, it's got peeling paint, and we're not going to cover that. So it puts the customer on notice.
Right. So I think it points out again for the person who's having trouble reaching Fair Plan, the benefit of working once again with an independent broker who knows how to get a hold of things, can provide the information that you need, and so forth.
Yeah, the one thing I want to add though is that because desperate times call for desperate measures, some of the name brands that people are familiar with, such as Farmers, that company, they are letting their agents sell these non-admitted products, these non-admitted surplus lines products. So it's, for those of your viewers who have loyalty to their agent, if they have a Farmers agent, they may be able to help you. Yeah. But right. By and large, the independent agents are going to be able to give you more options.
Great. Any thoughts about what a good deductible is? Somebody was asking, is $25,000 too much or not enough?
Hey, whatever you can afford out of pocket is the thing. I know that I keep raising mine every year because I keep thinking I'm not going to putting a claim in my house for a broken window. It's not going to be worth it because my rates are going to go up, and if I put another claim in, well, they're going to probably non-renew me anyway. So I just want to save it for the big one.
I think that's a good.
Well, I have 5,000, and yeah. A lot of people I know 5,000 is about as high as I can stomach.
Yeah. That's good. I think that's a good starting point for folks.
On the other hand, if a $25,000 deductible is going to bring the policy into your affordable range, it's something to consider.
Yeah, it is a balancing.
I have some high-end clients who would Chubb insures very high-end homes who have $50,000 deductibles because they can afford that.
Right. Good. So what do you think the future looks like, Amy? Where are we going with all this?
Yeah, well, it really, we're on the right track with risk reduction. We are on the right track we have now, through a lot of hard work by a lot of good people, including Fire Safe Councils and my organization's working group and the folks that you've had on your show, we've now got clear standards that we know what people can do to reduce risk. And now we just need to make sure that insurance companies really reward people for doing that work. So we got some work to do there. I believe that we will be able to get some stability back in the market. The insurance commissioner is advancing a sustainable insurance strategy to try to restore availability first, get the insurers back. So we may be able to depopulate the Fair Plan, which is what we want, and restore some competition, which is what we want. But I think long term, looking at what's happening here and in a lot of other states, not just wildfire-prone states, but also hurricane-prone states, the insurance industry is a for-profit industry, and they have signaled very clearly that they don't have the same confidence that they will be able to earn their same level of profits by insuring homes in areas that are vulnerable to severe weather events associated with climate change. So I do think we're on the road, a slow road, not the fast lane, to some sort of national disaster insurance program, but I think we're a long way from that.
Eric?
I want to add one thing into this too, and she's right about all that. That when a person has that issue that comes up with a non-renewal, of course it feels like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And as I said, don't panic. Don't panic because we'll find something for you. But the other thing is, whatever you get is just for now. It's not forever. Every insurance contract is for 1 year only. And it doesn't matter if you've been with company X for 20 or 30 years. I'm sorry, but if they're going to cancel you, they're going to cancel you, and you can't. The loyalty really doesn't play into there because they're looking at their models of risk today. The past doesn't matter as much. But whatever you get today, even if it's not ideal, it's what you get today, and it's what's going to be. We don't know exactly what's going to happen a year from now. With any luck at all, there'll be more options available. If things change in the legislature, if things change with the insurance companies, we may have more companies come into the market, and which will give us more options, some competition, some lower prices, maybe some better coverages, and then you can move out of these solutions that you have today. Because the first thing you want to do is get out of the FAIR plan the minute you can into some other regular company. And if you're in a surplus lines company, the minute you can get into an admitted company, you want to do that too. So these are things that are going to happen down the road. So whatever you have today is just for now. It's not forever.
So I think kind of summarizing all this, it's fair to say that really what we have is a situation where there is a lot higher risk than there used to be, and insurance companies are able to recognize that better with the modeling and so forth that they do. And so that understandably makes them a little bit more reluctant to write insurance everywhere. If you do get a notice of cancellation, what you're going to want to do is don't panic. That's a really good starting point, I think. And then get going right away to try to find a replacement. That's a good time to be talking about considering at least a independent broker, although if you have an agent you've worked with for a long time, they may be able to help you too. You should consider, if that's as a possible option, a surplus line, if you need to do that. Mm-hmm. FAIR plan, at least it's there. We're lucky to have it. There's states that don't have FAIR plan. All of this is not necessarily the future forever. Right. We're in an evolving period right now. Coverage is available out there. Be smart, do your shopping, think things through, and there are going to be a lot of changes come up. We'll be paying attention to that, and there's reason for optimism, I think, in the future going forward here.
I agree.
All right, so I really want to thank the two of you very much for being here. I really appreciate it. It's just been great, very helpful.
It's been great. Thank you.
We are going to show a short video here, which will kind of set us up for the next segment that's coming along. And this video really has to do with Marin County's home valuation program. Very important program, and our big pitch around the program is open your wildfire risk report. We'll talk more about that later, but when you get the evaluation, you're going to get an opportunity to look at your report. Be sure you open it up. It's your own personal guide to what you need to do to better prepare your home. So we'll be back in a minute.
Will your home survive a wildfire? Here in Marin, every home will be visited by a trained wildfire specialist who will evaluate risks on your property. Afterwards, you'll receive a home evaluation report, which is your personalized plan for home safety. It's easy to read and understand, with step-by-step instructions to reduce your risks. So be sure to open your report and make a plan to fix the issues identified. If you do your part, we can protect Marin from wildfire together.
Okay, so we're back here. I hope the video was a little bit helpful. Again, that home evaluation program is very important. Be sure you open a report. As we get set up here, I'm going to be introducing our next guest, who's Mark Brown, who's the Executive Officer of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, or as we're calling it these days, Marin Wildfire What do we think?
Marin Wildfire.
I thought so. That was it. Yeah. Much catchier name. So, Mark, welcome. Thanks very much. Really appreciate your being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So we heard from Amy and Eric quite a bit about what's going on in the insurance industry, what people should do. Now we're going to get a little bit more specific, I think, of what individual homeowners can do to help better prepare themselves. So what do you think right now would be a smart decision for a homeowner to make about beginning to prepare their home to reduce wildfire risk and hazard?
Well, the open your report video you just showed is the first step. After you receive an evaluation from one of our member agencies, defensible space inspectors or evaluators, definitely you want to open that report And on that report is going to be a list of items that we are recommending, or their items are actually required by local code or state resources code. And it really is about becoming fire adapted, and that's what our mission at Marin Wildfire is to help our communities become fire adapted, because wildfires aren't going away, and now we need to learn to be adapted to them, allow the fires to occur, and have our homes survive. There are the approach that we're asking our residents to take, we're calling it the house out approach, and that is to look at your house and look at what your house contributes to the wildfire problem. And the first piece is the ignitability of the home. And so we're looking at home hardening features. And there's really 3 key features that we're asking our residents to look at. Feature number 1 is the vents, whether it's your subfloor vents or, more importantly, your attic vents. And we're asking for 1/8 inch or less mesh or fire resistant vents, because what's happening is the embers are bouncing off up against the house, falling down, catching vegetation on fire, or the embers can actually hit the house and go up into the eaves. This 1/8 inch mesh is going to help with that ember load not going inside and dying in the home. The next one that we're asking our residents, really emphasizing with our residents, is gutter guards. Metal gutters with gutter guards, because the debris from your trees, debris from other people's trees starts accumulating in your gutter. Embers land in that gutter, it catches on fire, it falls down, and now it spreads into your house. And then the last piece really that we're emphasizing is the last segment of your fence, whether it's your gate or that last segment of your fence that attaches to your home, we want it to be non-combustible, because those fences really act like wicks, bringing fire to the house right underneath the eaves. There's other home hardening aspects, and those could be items that are lower down on your action item list. We want you to hit the high priority ones first. Then we have fire smart landscaping. And the very most important part of fire smart landscaping is the first 5 feet. And we're asking for nothing combustible to be in that first 5 feet. Saying that makes it sound easy, but sometimes there's some significant emotional attachments to what we have in our first 5 feet. I know that I've done that work at my house, and some of it's easy. You know, where I used to keep the garbage cans up against my house, I no longer keep the garbage cans up against my house. I've moved other flammable items away from my house, but there's some vegetation that we become attached to. The quintessential, those were grandma's roses, and they're asking us to remove them. But the data really shows that first 5 feet is the most important. And like I said, when the embers come in, and if they land in that first 5 feet, we don't want them to burn anything, because that's what is causing the fire to burn up against the house. And then the next 25 feet, so 0 to 30 feet from the home, we are asking for fire smart landscaping. We're not asking you to clear cut. We're asking for creating spacing between your vegetation, both horizontally and vertically.
So this home evaluation program, that is sponsored by Marin Wildfire?
Yes, our home evaluation program that we have going on in Marin is funded by our Measure C tax that is in place in Marin, and we're averaging about 30,000 inspections a year. And so that is an awesome opportunity for our residents to speak one-on-one with experts on creating home hardening and fire smart landscaping. And again, there's no charge to the resident because it's part of the tax measure.
So will all homes in Marin be inspected at some point?
That's our goal. We are targeting to have inspections occur, that each home will be inspected once every 3 years, but we're actually on a pace to do it once every 2 years. We're hitting the higher hazard areas more often, and then some of the lower hazard areas are not going to be as frequent.
Great. So the report itself, I think you alluded to this a little bit, but when you open it up, it's going to have some recommendations that you have to do and some things that are like a recommendation. How's all that work, or how's it prioritized?
So, and that's it varies from community to community within Marin. Within the town limits or city limits, there could be different ordinances from town to town. So our inspection software is actually tuned to the community that you live in. So any of the requirements that say you are required to do this, it's accurate for your residents. And then we'll say these are required, and then there's recommendations. Like the home hardening items right now are not requirements. Those are recommendations. And so it'll say, we highly recommend for you to do this to reduce your risk.
Right. I know we do sometimes hear from residents that, oh my gosh, I got this report and they want me to do 100 things. But I think you're making the point, there's usually very few things that are actually must do, and a lot of them are good ideas that we hope you'll take on over time.
Yeah, and when they see the list of items that we're recommending, it can become overwhelming when you look at it as a whole. And we're not insisting that you do them all at once. We're asking that you make a plan that may be a multi-year plan, and you just chip away at the items, and we hope that you hit the most important items first and then work from there.
Yeah, I thought that the strategy that you're recommending, adapting the wildfire home out approach, first 5 feet around the home, most vulnerable, and we're really talking about embers for the most part, right?
We are, and it is the Ember broadcast that is the #1 reason homes become ignited in wildfires.
Yeah, so make sure all your vents and openings are properly screened, make sure that your gutters are properly covered, make sure you don't have a combustible connection to the house, and no combustibles in that first 5 feet, and then improve the landscaping, right?
Exactly.
It'll be looking pretty good. So the report's really a customized version of how to do that, I
Right.
believe, right? Yeah, that's really good. There are some other programs out there that we've been hearing about, though. One of them is this IBHS Wildfire Prepared Home. Do you have anything to do with that?
Yeah, we have the IBHS, Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, is an institute that has created and has conducted the most research about home ignitability. And they have made significant advances in their recommendations on what prevents homes to ignite. And a lot of that is actually baked into our inspection reports now. They do have a wildfire prepared home designation. Anywhere else in the country, specifically in California, you would call up IBHS and say, hey, I would like to be evaluated for this wildfire prepared home designation, which can give you discounts and also help to ensure that you maintain your coverage. But in Marin, we were actually able to work with IBHS that if the resident gives us permission, we can export that report to IBHS so they can be evaluated for their wildfire prepared home designation, and therefore there doesn't have to be another inspection. However, I want to stress though that the data of our home inspections is very, very secure. There is no access to it. Nobody who's ever received one of our inspections has had their homeowner's insurance canceled because of our inspection. And the data is only released at the permission of the homeowner, and it's only released to IBHS.
Yeah. And certainly if you've done a good job preparing your house and there's a chance to keep or reduce your insurance, it's going to make sense to take advantage of having a report that absolutely justifies all the hard work that you've done.
Exactly. And if you have that certification and you do receive that non-renewal notice, you have some good evidence behind you that you should be insured.
Yeah. A similar program I've heard about is a Safer from Wildfire program, and there may be some discounts available for doing some of that?
Yeah, so the California Department of Insurance has created the Safer from Wildfire regulations. It's very similar to IBHS, but IBHS is an all or nothing type program, whereas Safer from Wildfire has about 10 items that as you increase the number of items that you have complied with, then the discounts start adding up. And some of the items could be the gutter guards that I talked about, zone 0, what type of siding you have on your house, your windows, the vents, enclosing your eaves, but also if you're part of a FireWise community, there's discounts for that. And we're working towards a community level of engagement that we can get certified by the Board of Forestry, saying that we are organized in a community level, and that would also qualify for more discounts.
Exciting stuff. Good to live in Marin where we have these programs.
Correct. Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, I do often hear, my gosh, there's all these things to do and this could be incredibly expensive. And I know it's a very general question, and it'll vary a little bit, but there's maybe some rough ideas of what gets somebody well on their way of getting the vents done, get the gutter guards put in, non-combustible bit gate, clear some of the combustibles around the home. What's something like that cost?
Well, if you're talking the home hardening aspect, which is by far the most expensive of the recommendations, About 10 to 15,000 could be that item, or the amount that is on average between gutter guards, vents, and a non-wood closure for the fence. But the good news is that we do have a grant program with Marin Wildfire at up to $2,500 to support those efforts, with a $15,000 lifetime limit for our residents.
Right. And again, it's something that each year make some improvements, make a long-term plan, kind of chip away at this the best we can, right?
Yeah, and then the cost of the vegetation management is far less, right? And it could be just how you look at your house, how you rearrange things. Moving my garbage can cost me nothing. Moving my firewood cost me nothing. So take advantage of those items.
Yeah. I've heard some people say, gosh, they're recommending I cut down all my trees. Is that where we at?
No, I've heard that one too, and absolutely, we are not in favor of removing trees. In fact, especially if you have like really nice oaks around your house, redwoods and stuff like that, the trees are a benefit. They help create shade, they help increase the moisture of the soil that's in the ground, they help increase the moisture of the vegetation that's underneath them. And so when the embers land in that area, it makes it actually less ignitable. We just want to make sure that there's no ladder fuels, what we call ladder fuels, so that if the ember lands and catches this bush on fire, it doesn't extend up into the canopy of the tree.
Yeah. And that's pretty easy to deal with. Cut the tall grass, remove the brush, which we really don't need, limb the trees up a bit, and then we remove the ladder fuels.
And we do have a grant program to support defensible space. We also have our Chipper Day program that if you remove the vegetation, you can sign up for Chipper Day, put the material at your assigned week out in front of your house, and we'll come by and pick it up.
Pretty good deal.
Yes.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about what residents can do to improve things, but there's Marin Wildfire and a lot of Marin agencies are doing quite a bit more. You want to talk about some of the other projects?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, becoming fire adapted is why Marin Wildfire was created. And it's going to take a full approach. Our residents are going to have to be engaged, and that's what we've been talking about. But we as Marin Wildfire and our fire departments as our member agencies have a role to play. One of the biggest things that we're doing is evacuation route clearing, so that when people evacuate, they're safe. It also has a benefit of allowing our firefighters to get in more aggressively, safely, and quicker to start taking suppression action. And then we have numerous what we're calling shaded fuel breaks, but in reality what they are is expanded defensible space along our wildland-urban interface boundary. And we have done the modeling behind it, and we are showing that we have an 80% decrease in the amount of fire that will get up into the canopy, and keeping the fires in the canopy is really what causes homes to be destroyed. So we are creating an 80% decrease. The rate of spread has been cut in half, and the accessibility for our firefighters has more than doubled. So we're creating a safer environment for our residents, allowing them more time to evacuate, and we're giving the firefighters a chance to succeed in suppression. And the way the shaded fuel breaks work is that sometimes a 3-acre grass fire can get to a house faster than a fire engine can. Well, with the shaded fuel breaks, the work that our residents are doing, that home defends itself from that 3-acre grass fire.
Well, this is kind of goes back to some of what Amy and Eric were saying about what insurance companies are looking at. So when they're looking at a model, they take a look at a place like Marin, where you have residents taking a lot of action, taking advantage of chipper days, making these home improvements, and then you have these large shaded fuel break projects, evacuation route clearance, and other. That kind of speaks to exactly what they're looking for, I would think.
Yes, and unfortunately, the models that the insurance industry have been using are completely blind to the work that the residents have been doing, and completely blind to the work that we have been doing as well. So Commissioner Lara is working towards making that type of work visible to the insurance industry, and quite frankly, the insurance industry is doing it as well. They want California's business. They want to find a way to make it sustainable for them to be in California, and so there's actually updates that are rolling out to the risk models the insurance industry is using to decide whether or not to insure in California. That is taking into account some of the features that our residents are doing, and then we're also working with them to take into account the community level work.
Well, that's something positive for us to look forward to.
For sure.
So let's take a look at a couple of questions that came in. One of them says, fire doesn't know any boundaries, and we have multiple cities within the county and all. Why do they have to have different building requirements?
That's That's a great question, and I know that our fire prevention officers have been working hard for decades to have consistent codes across the community. But when we bring proposed codes to city councils and then there's public engagement, that's when you start seeing the changes in the different codes because of the public engagement. Mill Valley is a great example. When Chief Welch from Mill Valley Fire wanted to institute a Zone 0 type program, and it could have been the stepping stone for the rest of the communities to follow, and you would have thought that he was asking for people to give up their firstborn, and the community pressure drove away that 0 to 3 feet is all he was talking about at that time. San Rafael has different ordinances, and exactly what San Rafael had was some of the things that Chief Welch had, and the community did not want that, and they pressured the council not to accept that. So, but I think the advantage of Marin Wildfire is that now we have members of each council on our board of directors that are becoming much more well-informed and understand the importance of consistent codes across the different towns in Marin. So our goal is to create that consistency.
Yeah. I can really tell we're moving that direction, so it's a real plus here. One person would like to know why are we not using grants to fund installation of sprinklers?
So the sprinkler, external sprinklers are an item that we've looked at quite a bit. We've seen the research that has led up to it. They actually haven't been scientifically proven to be effective, number one. My experience and many others who have firefighting experience like mine have found that water applied without purpose is rarely useful. And so sprinklers just broadcast the water out. It doesn't necessarily put the water where it needs to be, and water rarely works by itself. There has to be someone to make the water penetrate to where we need it to go. Plus, if every resident had a sprinkler system, we'd actually completely devastate the water system. And the water system would collapse, and the sprinklers themselves would no longer be effective, nor would the firefighters have any water to fight fire with.
Yeah. So there's pros and cons, but I think on the whole, we've moved in the right direction on that.
I would agree.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Let's see. Are creating these, I think we've covered this a little bit, but it is worth bringing up again. We're creating these shaded fuel breaks. We're taking these kinds of action. Have we seen any movement towards recognition that by the insurance industry of what's happening here in Marin?
Yes, it hasn't realized itself in decrease in non-renewals. However, we have important members of the insurance industry identifying what we are doing in Marin, and actually they are contacting us and saying, how can we work with you to make your work visible to the insurance industry? So we've made in the last 2 or 3 months, we've made some very important connections that down the road, I think is going to pay off for us.
Yeah. I do think Marin is recognized as being in the forefront of trying to be really aggressive about fire prevention, wildfire prevention.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So anything you want to leave us with? Any forecast for the future?
Forecast for the future is there is light at the end of the tunnel. Whether it be we get a little bit an increased rate in notices of non-renewal, that's probably likely. But there is a path forward, and I love what Eric was saying. It's a 1 year by 1 year, and take it 1 year by 1 year. I did receive my non-renewal notice, and I have non-combustible siding. I have gutter guards and vents in place. I have Zone 0 in place, and I still have my non-renewal. So it's been an issue for Marin Wildfire that we've been trying to help tackle this problem, and now I'm dealing with it personally. And so I'm taking proactive measures, and I suggest to our residents that you all take proactive measures so that when you do, if you do get that non-renewal notice, you can say, look, I've been doing my part, help me help you.
So we've both been in that situation. I was recently dropped. In fact, there's a question on here naming a company, that's the one that dropped me. And frankly, they're just pulling out. It's not because my home really wasn't very well prepared. And this is sort of the shakeup that's going on in the industry right now. And as Amy said and Eric said, this is for 1 year. A lot of changes are coming down the road, and it could be kind of tough going through this, but I think there's reason for optimism in the future. So with that, I'd really like to thank Mark for being
My
here
pleasure.
tonight, and Eric and Amy who were here earlier. Really appreciate that. We tried to address your questions as they came in. We will put answers to any of the outstanding questions on our website at firesafemarin.org. A recording of the show is going to go up on FireSafe Marin's YouTube channel in a couple of days. Lots of other great videos on there, hundreds of them. You'll get a kick out of it. So please continue the conversation there by posting your questions and comments. We can respond to the comments that come on the YouTube channel. And for more and updated information on insurance and risk mitigation, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Your engagement matters. I wasn't a big social media person, but I can tell you I kind of into it now because we really try to make it interesting for people. So thank you very much for watching, and please stay safe out there, and we appreciate your taking the time to listen to the program tonight. Thank you.